Oh, man. Good evening, gamers, and welcome to another fun filled episode of Games with Dave. Tonight, I have the pleasure of being joined by my newest friend, Andy Cumbow from Legendary Tales. And Andy has created a really cool D20 based tabletop role playing game system called Tales of Legend, in which you don't choose a class. I came up with that because we didn't want to call it a classless system because it's got a lot of class to it. And you actually craft your own setting for this TTRPG. Really creates an endless amount of possibilities for both players and the Legend Master, which in other games is called the GM or DM. And if the game really piques your interest, you can check out legendarytalesrpg.com and pick it up. There's a free version and also a pay version, correct, Andy?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. And welcome to the show, my friend. I'm so excited to have you on and talk about this system.
Super happy to be here. As soon as we met each other, we clicked so well, and it's been so great getting to know you. So
I know we've chatted so much this week, and I've got to be careful to not talk over you because we're both very enthusiastic people, which we commented about before we went live. So, but we're gonna have a fun night. So, I'm excited to get going. So, when did you start playing role playing games, and what was the first system that you played?
The first time, so when I was a kid, like before I knew about any of this stuff, playing make believe, coming up with like your OCs in a world you love. I did that with my friends all the time. I had no idea this kind of thing existed. I was actually in the Boy Scouts, and I am an Eagle Scout. That was a really fun part of my life. But a couple of the guys were playing 3.5 D&D, and I thought, oh, what's this? And so they introduced it to us. We played it intense. It was, and I just became completely obsessed. One of the older guys ended up giving me all of his books.
Nice.
But then I totally went out of it. TTRPGs forever. I went to do my my bachelor's degree and all that stuff. And so I came back with 5th edition D&D, and I fell in love with what they did between 3.5 and 5e, simplifying, cleaning up, having a system that makes sense like mechanically in the background. And I got super into the mechanics of 5th edition, started homebrewing. I was a forever DM, and yeah, I haven't played almost any other TTRPGs besides those two. As you can see, I kind of like fantasy.
I could not tell with your sword collection by any means.
You've got quite a few back there.
What's that?
This is only part of it. This whole tavern is just surrounded by sharp objects and lanterns and things.
That's awesome, though. I love the setup, man, especially like the little flickering lights and everything you've got going on. And
these are like LED flame bulbs. I actually took the regular light bulbs out of the ceiling and put these in, so you have that effect.
That is so cool. So at what point, I guess you'd say, with 5e, did you decide that you wanted to create your own system? And what was it that really prompted you to do so?
So, like I said, the thing that I fell in love with about 5e is how much easier it was to grasp than 3.5. That D20 bounded accuracy sort of clean way that they figured things out. Compared to 3.5, that was night and day. And I fell in love with the mechanics. So first I became a dungeon master, and then I started, because I fell in love with the mechanics, I started homebrewing. I started homebrewing magic items and spells and subclasses. And then as I really got into the mechanics, I took on what I considered the greatest challenge, creating whole classes, coming up with a 1 through 20. It wasn't easy. But then I realized what the real challenge was. It would be, let's create a game. And around the same time, which I'd been playing 5e for like 6 years at that point, I started understanding that I was really enjoying that clean simplicity. And I was noticing where it could continue to become cleaner, where it could continue to become simpler. I was getting tired with what I consider to be bloat from the system, not mechanically, but just in the way things were presented and all of the words and all of the illustrations and all the flavor text. And I went, I'm going to make a game for somebody like me. And then that's where Tales of Legend came from. It took me about 2 years to make this system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell what you put into it. And one of the things that you did that I really like to simplify things, and I noticed that you only use a D20, a D6, and a D4 versus the whole 7 dice set.
Right.
Or 14 dice, depending on what dice chain you're using.
True.
So I hate to keep using the word prompted, but what was it that I guess we'll say drove you to lower the dice count, so to speak?
This is really funny. I didn't know this was a problem until I started introducing my wife to D&D. She was having the hardest time with what I now call dice paralysis. If you are not really into these D20 games, which, let's face it, not even all TTRPGs are D20 based.
Right. There's a lot of D6, D10, percentile.
Exactly. She would have I would say, okay, you need to roll your D20. Which one's that? And I realized a D20 and a D12 are really similar. A D10 and a D8 can be really similar. And not only that, having 7 different options and then double or triple of that if it's 3D6. For a lot of people who are newer players, they get stuck. They get stuck on all the different kinds of dice. What are the dice that are the most distinguished from any of the others? The D4 and the D6. They cannot be mistaken from any other dice because the other ones are more rounded.
Right.
And then you still have the base D20. It is bigger than the other two. It is the foundational dice. And typically when you play Tales of Legend, you only need 2D6 and 2D4. So you have 5 dice and it's only 3 kinds. And when she plays Tales of Legend, she doesn't have to ask me at all what to do. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was a really big thing. And if for those of you who really like the standard system, well, you can do that. 2D6 is a D12. 2D8 or 2D4 is a D8. What's a D10? 1D4, 1D6.
Now, oh boy, I just lost the word. Wow.
I want to help, but I don't know how.
I'm trying to think of if you roll a D10 10 times, you can get X results. The ratios of
right. The distribution.
Add up the same. Thank you. Jeez, that word did not want to come to my brain. Does the distribution work as well with a D6 and a D4 versus a D10?
There is a little bit of a difference. It's less swingy and it pushes more towards the middle. So you will have less, let's say it was a 1D6, 1D4, you would have less 10s, 0 1s. 1 would be impossible to roll. And that convergence towards the middle 4 numbers would be more. It's actually a more consistent roll than, it's less swingy.
Gotcha. So that actually brought up another question I didn't even have on here. How do critical failures and critical successes work if you can't get a 1?
So with the with the D20 you can still get a 1. And you can still get a 20. So it's very typical. I actually don't have written into the rules a critical failure because everybody's different about their opinions on critical failures. I do have critical successes, but that's because I think the critical success, from what I understand from D&D, can be improved upon. Anybody who watches any sort of D&D or fantasy D20 YouTube knows what a lot of those fixes are, but I just wanted to go ahead and do it anyway, because the idea of just rolling 2 dice and potentially only rolling a 2 that's just terrible. Let's see.
It happens to me all the time.
So if you roll a 20 or basically have a critical success in this game, you maximize the dice roll and then add a roll on top of it.
Gotcha. All right. That makes sense. I'm sorry. I couldn't think of the word distribution. It's
that's okay.
It's just I heard this solid hum in my head while I was trying to think of the word. um, so one thing that I'm really impressed with, and I talked to you a bit about this before we went live, is this book is only 60 pages, worth 30 of them being the rule set, and the other 30 roughly being the creatures of the game.
Mhm.
How the heck were you able to fit so much crunch into, like, this is like having a peanut brittle bar with 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 extra peanuts that's got just a little bit of caramel, but just enough to make it right, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It was easier than you think when I made a certain decision. The point of Tales of Legend, there it is, a TTRPG system for your world, your heroes, and your stories. I wanted to make a backbone system that is only mechanics. I did not want to tell you what your world was, what the lore was, what the classes were. I wanted to come up with a mechanical system that was simple and easy enough for anybody to use. Because when I was a dungeon master, I hated reading written adventures. I hated it. I have ADHD. I don't like reading a 100-page book and trying to memorize something somebody else came up with. I find that if I make up something, it just stays in my head. Even if I type down everything, I never look at it after I type it down because it just stays in my head because it's mine. And I know a lot of people who play D&D but throw in flavor from different kinds of fantasy. I have a lot of love for, and a lot of my friends do, of like Japanese JRPG video games. That's a very different fantasy flavor than your like D&D or Pathfinder world. And so I really wanted to make a system that worked for everything. So when I did that, I got rid of all the flavor text. I got rid of all the illustrations because I didn't want. I know a lot of people like art. Here's my hot take. I don't like art in my source books because I know what a dragon looks like. I know what a sword looks like. And I'm just looking for the mechanic. I'm looking for the rule that I'm looking for. But especially in Tales of Legend, I don't want to flavor your understanding of what you think a dragon is in your world. So when I got rid of all of that, when I got rid of this is a bard, now let me do a page of flavor text on what a bard is, and I just focused on everything that I would need to play the game, it boiled it down, it boiled it down, it boiled it down. And even though even I cannot memorize everything in the book, since it's 30 pages and there's no nonsense, it's just the rules.
Right.
It takes me 5 seconds to find what I want in the book. And I think that's only going to appeal to a certain kind of gamer. But for me, after playing D&D for 7 years, that's what I wanted. I wanted no nonsense. Give me the mechanic. I'll do the flavor.
See, if I could remember building my own world, my ADHD is to the point that I read something, I look up, like I would see your banner behind you, and I'd be like, oh, Tales of Legend. What did I just write? And so, yeah, but I love what you've done in, like you said, of boiling it down and just like getting it down to the bare bones of what you need, but it's still got so much crunch to it that it.
Yeah, anytime, like I was a huge Critical Role fan for the longest time. I mean, I still am. I just don't have time anymore. And D20, Dimension 20, all those guys.
Yep.
Whenever so when I watch TTRPGs, I'm like, the game master and the players do all of this stuff. And they should do all of this stuff. I shouldn't tell you any of this stuff. This should be on something you enjoy doing. What is your flavor? What is your perception of what this thing is? So the longer I've done this, the more I'm like, I just need to get out of it. I need to get out of your way. Here are your mechanics. Here's your backbone. It's simple. It's easy to understand. It's fun. Have fun. I don't want to get in your way. You're the creative one here.
That's awesome. I love it, dude. You've done a great job with doing that. So
thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Another thing, like there's so many things that I noticed going through this book that are just like the slightest little tweaks to everything. Yeah. And one of those tweaks being that rather than 6 ability scores, you have 4 aspects.
Yes.
Could you, well, I guess what it is the players get points in each aspect.
Yes.
And what can you tell me about the 4 aspects aspect rolls and then how they work to deliver basically the same result as traditional ability scores.
Okay.
That was a
So
lot to bite off. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay, because this is the part I'm excited about. I don't know how all of you experience TTRPGs necessarily, but if you're like me and you sort of come from like a D&D starting point, and that's sort of like your base, and then everything else is sort of a modification of that understanding. I mean, if you grew up with easy D6, for example, you have a completely different understanding. But I started from those 6 ability scores, and I realized it doesn't quite make sense from an objective level. For one thing, Constitution doesn't do anything. It's just hit points.
Right.
It's a hit points and one saving throw, and that's it. So physicality, that's one aspect, is strength and Constitution put together. It is just your physical ability, your physicality.
Gotcha.
I think that actually is realistic in most situations. If you are tough, if you are strong, you're also have high endurance and, can take a beating. Grace is the same as dexterity. Dexterity is the best ability score idea in D&D. You can argue it does too much, but the reason it does too much is because there's 6. I only have 4. So grace is pretty comparable to dexterity. It is your speed, it is your accuracy, things of your agility, things of that nature. But then I get to the part that I can't stand: intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And the way that those things work. Look at the abilities, the skills in D&D, for example. Why is your perception based off of wisdom?
Yeah, you would think in a way it would be based off how intelligent you are and
maybe
to perceive.
I would actually even argue that basing it off of any of those 6 things doesn't really make sense. It's just we had to do that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Why is it that persuasion? It's actually not 3 but 4. Persuasion, intimidation, deception, and insight are 4 different things. When you're talking about somebody who specializes in social skills, they can typically do all of those things.
I like that.
And then another part of it is, I remember watching a YouTube video of like one of my favorite YouTubers taking ninja training, like legitimate ninja training, and they were teaching him how to be quiet in a forest, stealthing. This dude's almost 300 pounds. The skill of learning how to move quietly has nothing to do with your dexterity. It is a skill. So my skills are completely separate from the aspect bonuses, because skills are things you took time to learn how to do. Okay, so physicality, grace. Next, I have focus. That's your magic thing. You tell me what that is in your world. It does not matter to me. If everybody accesses their magic through the same way, if everybody does it through different ways, but your focus is your ability to interact with that esoteric thing and how well you do with that. And since it's not attached to any skills, it gets to be its own thing. So you can have a 0 in focus and be totally fine. And then the 4th one is skill. And all skill does is allows you to generate skill points so you can put points in the different skills that exist. And I think having 4 instead of 6 is just way cleaner and easier to understand, like way cleaner and easier to understand. Now, as you level up, you gain aspect points. At level 1, you start with 3, and then at most levels, you gain 1 more. As you level up, you put your new point in one of your 4 scores as you go building the player you want, building the character you want, building the hero you want. If you want a fighter, okay, high physicality, 0 focus, low skill, and moderate grace seems about right to me. If you want a caster, max out focus. What kind of caster do you want to be? You want to be a I cast fist wizard. Okay, you can have a high physicality next. Cool, whatever. You want to be good at the things, high skill, that's fine too. Or you could do all of them evenly if you wanted to. Whatever your character concept is, Then just build 1 point at a time the hero you want, which, by the way, gets rid of this weird double-digit ability score and then a single-digit ability modifier. You're like, if you have 20 strength, you have a +5.
+5, yes. Yep.
Okay. In Tales of Legend, your physicality score itself is the modifier. So at level 1, if you put 3 points in physicality, +3. Ta-da.
I like it because I stink at math, and I cannot tell you how many times I have. Like, it's funny because you have created a lot of crunch with this system, but it's simple crunch, if that makes sense.
I so did that on purpose. I simplified so much that I thought didn't matter, so that I could make things more complicated in ways I thought were more fun.
Gotcha.
So this is not simple all around. It mostly comes out in tactics during combat. That is where it mostly will come out, is tactical things. But building your character and just understanding the basic rules for how ability scores, or I'm sorry, skill checks called aspect rolls, or accuracy rolls, which are like attack rolls, all that's just way simpler. So much easier to understand, I think.
So how quick can you put a character together for Tales of Legend?
I can do it really quick. I think it depends on your experience level with tabletop role-playing games. If there's one thing that Tales of Legend might be hard for some people, it's since there are no classes in the book, since there are no examples, of archetypes, the fighter archetype, there's a lot on the player to have their own idea and realize that themselves. So if you are brand new to fantasy in general, if you're a very normal person and you're not a complete and total nerd like the rest of us, you might struggle because of the creativity aspect of it. But you don't have to be experienced with tabletop games. If you just have a good idea of, this is the character I want, it's really easy. The book will just walk you through level 1 at the very beginning. And then after that, leveling up is much, much, much easier. So I would say for an average person, 15 minutes, if you have a character concept.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I grew up watching every fantasy film ever made. And I'm looking, which we'll go over in a little bit, I'm looking at the character sheet here. And I'm like, wow, this is so easy. And it would be fast, because...
Yeah, I'm glad you think so.
Yeah, I do. So you kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, but you also get bonuses for the aspects, both base and advanced bonuses, it looked like.
Yes.
I understood that right.
Let me define what a bonus is real quick.
Okay.
Because I have different terminology. When you put an aspect point in an aspect score, you get to pick a bonus. Think of it, if you're coming from D&D or Pathfinder, think of it as a feat. Think of it as a feature. There is a list of these bonuses. There's a list for physicality. There's a list for grace. There's a list for focus. There's a list for skill. Every time I put an aspect point in physicality, I get to pick from the whole list of physicality the one that I like. And so you might want to pick based on, I admit, I'm a bit of a optimizer when I play D&D. So I can see people going from a character concept and saying, well, it makes sense that this person would have high physicality, therefore 3 points in physicality. Now what do I want to pick? Or I could see somebody starting from that bonus list and going, I want that and that and that and that and that. Okay, now what level do I want that? And, do it that way based on what bonuses they really like. There is a base list, and then there is an advanced list. Here's how it works. You put 1 point in grace. You can get any of the bonuses from that basic grace list. The advanced grace list, it has to be your 4th point. Once you hit 4 points in grace, you have access to all of those grace points, both the basic and the advanced. So the advanced features, the advanced bonuses, are more mechanically powerful. It rewards you for saying, this is what I want to be good in, which is interesting because the maximum, by the way, there's 15 levels instead of 20. Nobody plays 20 levels of a game. Once you hit level 13, your aspect maximum reaches its maximum, which is 7. It's not 5, it's 7 in this game.
Did you see Grimwood Games saying,
Yeah.
speak for yourself, Andy, I'm as normal as a mule is a horse.
I know, that's why I'm not worried about you making a character. So since the maximum is 7, 4 is the middle. So if you wanted to put like 3s or 4s in 2 or 3 different scores, you can do that. If you want to be a little bit more of a jack of all trades.
Yeah, if you want to be generalized versus specialized, or
right. And if you want to be specialized, you're only investing 7 points into one score. There's still there's about, for an average character, it's about 13 points. So you can actually, yeah, you could go 7-6-0-0, or you can go 7-2-2-2, or whatever you want that to be.
Right. Very cool. Like, I could just, yeah, I already know what I want to make for a character.
Tell me, I so want to know.
I loved Conan as a kid.
Okay.
So I would probably drop my 7 into physicality, and then probably go 3 grace and 3 skill because of his thieving abilities,
yes,
mixed with his maneuverability.
And then you would zero out the focus, which makes you a little more vulnerable to magic, which makes sense for the character.
Right. Exactly, because he would be very susceptible to a spell, but he's going to be able to just go house on you.
Let me talk about that for just a split second.
Sure.
No saving throws. I know that saving throws thematically sort of make sense to try to ward off something that's being done to you, but it's so confusing to newer players, it's not even funny. The person who is trying to do something to someone makes an accuracy roll, and the person who's trying to defend it has a target number. That's it. And in Tales of Legend, you have a physical defense and a mental defense. Physical defense is way more common, and so most people really want to work on that physical defense. But the mental defense will show up more in higher levels, and even in mid levels, it tends to be a little more devastating.
So is it your mental that defends you against magic spells, or?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Any sort of magic, and not just, well, yeah, I mean, any sort of magic, if it's a spell or if it's a hostile, because, an explosion, if an explosion happens in 5e, you're going to say, oh, make a dexterity saving throw. There's no saving throws. Instead, the explosion is trying to hit your physical defense.
Very cool. I like that. I feel like that would actually, in some senses, speed up gameplay. Rather than stopping for a saving throw, comparing it to their roll, whereas it's just, no, you missed that number. Boom.
Yeah. And the way that I play, everybody plays differently. I'll tell you from the beginning what the target number is. So if the very first time somebody tries to roll a spell attack, I'll say, okay, you're trying to hit a mental defense of 13. Why not just tell them that? And then they can tell me if they hit or not. I don't have to know what they rolled. Right.
It's kind of, geez, I keep losing my train of thought with the word. Or I shouldn't say my train of thought. I lose the word that comes into my brain, and then I hear that hum. I
get it. I do get it.
Yeah, I'm just going to move on rather than stick on it, and we'll come back to it if I think of it. But while we're talking about magic, why don't you kind of explain how the magic system works for Tales of Legend?
If you play D&D, Pathfinder, Dungeon Crawl Classics, whatever, it's nothing like that. Because I think when we really get into fantasy tabletop role-playing games, we take for granted how weird a spell slot system is. It's weird. It's what we're used to in TTRPGs, but I don't think it reflects magic in your favorite movies or TV shows at all. I have prepared a number of castings per day, and when I cast this number of spells, I'm done.
Yeah, you never see that in a movie.
Tell me any TV show, video game, or movie that you see magic represented that way, including the D&D movie.
Right.
So I always harken back to Avatar: The Last Airbender / Legend of Korra. I love that. And I think it represents a lot of magic systems, which are, unless you physically exhaust yourself, you can always use your magic. Like, there's the idea that it does exhaust you, but people just go, they just use their magic, right?
Right.
And it's not based on a number of spells. It's just I'm using my magic. And in many cases, including Avatar: The Last Airbender, they don't even think of it as magic. It's just, but it is an ability that's supernatural.
Right. Like the arcane wonders.
Yeah, exactly. A firebender isn't thinking, I cast fireball. That's not what's happening. They're just going, and it happens.
Right.
So the way that I wanted to represent that, because I think not just in that, but in most versions of fantasy, that's how magic actually works. But I didn't want to use a mana bar either. I think that's too video gamey.
Yep.
So let's start with what is magic at your focus. So when you decide that you want to be able to use magic, you're going to take a focus bonus called Magic Source. You tell me where you got your magic from. If you want to be classic D&D, I got it from Arcane Studies. Great. I got it from my bloodline. Great. I got it from a magic amulet I found. Okay. That's not something that's in D&D, right? Cool, fine, whatever. Whatever it is, that makes sense. Now, here's how it works. Your focus score gives you a number of what's called magical taps, where you tap into your magical source. So if I have if I put 3 points in focus, I have 3 magic taps. When I decide to tap into my magic source, I use a free action to tap into that magic source. And for the next minute, 10 rounds, because we do the standard like 6 seconds per round thing, I can do whatever I want. For that whole minute, I can do whatever I want. I have tapped into that magic source. What limits magic in my game is the action economy itself. The action economy is based off of action points. You have 2 action points at level 1. You have 3 action points at level 2. And it scales to the point at the end of the game you have up to 6 action points.
Wow, that's nice.
When you, the other thing that limits is you can only have 2 of the same action per turn. So I can only cast 2 spells per turn. Or per round of combat. My turn. So what do I do instead? Another thing that my system has, this is true for spell casting and it's true for martial characters as well, is you can expend multiple action points on a single action. In Tales of Legend, you have 10 spell options. That's it. You do not have a book of 50 spells that are at different levels. So let's take magic attack. I expend, I tap into my magical source. I'm going to use my action to cast magic attack. Well, what's your magic attack? Fire-based. Okay, cool. You're throwing a fireball. Fantastic. Well, is that the only action you plan on taking this round? You can put a second action point into that spell to make it more powerful. What kind of more powerful? There are 5 options, and each of those scale with more action points. Do you want more damage? Do you want more range? Do you want it to be an AoE? Do you want whatever? Sculpt your fireball. Sculpt your scorching ray. Whatever you want it to be. And you tell me what it looks like. All I need to know is the damage type, the range, and the effects it has based on that. But because each of the 10 spell options have 5 different ways to rank it, it's called spell ranking. And each one of those can be ranked more than once. The spell casting options are almost limitless. That's based on your tactical choices.
That is so cool, man.
I like it.
I do.
So now, can you still run out of spellcasting? Yes. When the number of your magical taps reach 0, you've physically exhausted your ability to use your magic tap. Oh no, what do? You take a break. In my game, short rests are called take a break. It's only 10 minutes. You gain 1 magic tap back every time you take a break.
Nice.
Oh, what's to stop me from taking breaks constantly? Well, you consume supplies every time you take a break.
So you run out of water, food, and all that, the more breaks you take.
It's 1 supply for every time you take a break, and it's 3 supplies to sleep.
So it cuts down on the constant, short rest. Oh, short rest. Oh,
there's one more thing, which is you can only take a break once every hour, because that's just stupid. in the sense, if you were looking at it like I'm watching this movie, It's not very epic for people to take a break every 30 minutes. So
Right. Yeah, they're walking a mile and a half, take a break, walk a mile and a half.
which by the way, Tales of Legend is different than D&D the way D&D is intended. Now, if you watch something like Critical Role or Dimension 20, almost no one plays D&D this way. The way that the designers intended D&D is it's a war of attrition. You're supposed to have like 8 combat encounters per adventuring day. No one plays that way.
No.
Everyone I know plays 1 or 2 combats per day because every combat is this big epic life or death thing because that's what's fun. So in Tales of Legend, we lean into that. I fully expect you to go Nova every combat and then take a break.
Love it.
You should have almost all of your resources back every time you make a combat. So you, as the Legend Master, make a super deadly encounter every time. That's way more fun anyway.
That's because of second breakfast, Dave.
They are sitting around a lot in that movie, aren't they?
They do, especially trying to get into the mines of Moria.
Yeah. They're taking breaks even though they're having less than 1 combat encounter per day, too.
Oh, man, I am loving this. Like I said, you've got crunch, but simplicity.
And that's what I was going for.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love 5e. I don't know if you saw earlier in my post, I'm actually running a 5e game starting pretty soon for 10 people. So, yeah, it's so I guess we'll call this commercial break or something for whatever reason. But I got out of playing games for about 20 years when my brother passed away and missed 3.5, kind of caught the tail end of 4. And I'm like, I don't really want to play. And just because I played with my brother and all that. And this group of people that I'm playing with are the folks that got me back into gaming.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love all 10 of them from the bottom to the top of my heart. And I cannot wait to play with them. And I wish they were watching, but it doesn't look like they are, unfortunately. But
maybe they'll see the YouTube video.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to share the bajumpus out of this. I don't know what bajumpus means, but
I'll be the first to say that I still love playing 5e. I don't like running it anymore because I like running Tales of Legend. I think it's easier. But every time somebody's like, hey, you want to play this 5e game? I still love building those characters and watching how those mechanics interact with each other.
Yep.
But guess what? I made sure Tales of Legend has that too. There's a a highly optimized thing you can do where you have really high physicality as well as fairly high grace, where you turn into this 2-wielding large weapon, like 5 attacks per round kind of thing.
Holy smokes. Well, this is the perfect segue into my next question, which is, how does combat work in Tales of Legend? I know that's something you're very excited to talk about.
I'm so excited.
And what are the actions, I guess you would say, which that's what it is, that players can take in combat?
Can we actually pull up the character sheet for this?
We sure can. Give me one second here.
So I already talked about the action points.
Wrong button.
Whoop,
there we go.
Yeah. So we've already talked about the action points, which is the biggest. It is the thing that balances the game, is the action point system. Go to page 2 if you don't mind.
You bet.
So you see here on the right, you have up to 6 action points. You have 2 at level 1. And then I put under there the 10 standardized actions and the 10 standardized free actions. So if you're a newer player to the game, or especially a newer player to TTRPGs in general, it's right there on the sheet.
That is so helpful.
I love it. And so you might, let's say you're level 2 and you have 3 action points, because that's way more fun. You could move twice and attack once. You can move once and attack twice. And then you're going to ask, well, what do you do if you're already in melee and you attack twice and you don't want to do anything else? Then we're going to have to talk about status effects later. So what you do, you're trying to expend your action points, but then you also see the free actions. That's sort of like a bonus action. That's always 1. But these are your incidental actions, like communicate, for example. You ever get tired of playing a TTRPG and everybody's having this conversation in the middle of combat that's taking way more than 6 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I have gamified it. Oh, I'm going to take the communicate free action. Great. What is your 6-second message to everybody?
I love it.
Most of these you can probably tell what they are. Magic action, using magic. Oh, the exert action is really fun.
Yeah, I was actually just going down the free actions and back up the regular actions, and I saw exert, and I'm like, what is that?
When you take the exert action, it uses up 1 action point, right? All it does is it gives you 2. It gives you an extra action point for that round. As soon as you do that, you gain the winded status effect, which is brutal. But if you want that last bit effort, like, no, if I could just get that one, take the exert action.
So let's say I was down to 2 action points. I want to make sure I've got this right. And I move to get closer so I can attack. I could use exert to then have 2 more actions.
Correct.
So I would be able to do 2 attacks.
Correct.
Perfect. I like that a lot. And then you become winded, which I'm assuming, which we can get into in a minute about status effects. But I'm assuming that means like a first tier exhaustion almost but you recoup.
I mean, I can go ahead and tell you what it is.
Yeah, go for it.
When you are winded, which you can have more than 1 application of winded, you now have 1 less action point every turn.
And until you take a break, I'm guessing.
Except winded does not go away with a take a break. Only a sleep can get rid of winded. I do not want you exerting every combat because it's optimal. I want it to be the dramatic option.
That's smart, my friend. That is smart.
I appreciate that. Actually, if you scroll down just a touch, you'll see the status effects, all of them. It's there on the left.
There we go. Afflicted, agony, concealed, fallen, hampered, helpless, staggered, stuck, winded, wounded, and dying.
And that's it.
Wow.
I got so tired of there being like 18 different things, especially like in 5e, for example, how like frightened is the same thing as poisoned, basically, is the same thing as blinded, basically. I just have afflicted. And you tell me what kind of affliction it is.
Gotcha. So I get what you're saying. Like, say, afflicted, you get nailed with a fireball. You could either be blinded or burned.
Yeah, if you, as the Legend Master, think it is dramatic to make that have a blinding effect, fantastic, you're afflicted. That easy.
I like it. And you've done such a great job with this game. Like, we've got to get this into more people's hands, man.
God, I want to play it more so badly, I think.
Well, I got a deal for you because I would love to have you run a game, like stream you running a game or 2 on my channel if you would be up.
I would love it. If anybody's watching this either live or going to see the YouTube video in the next week or 2, and this sounds fun to you, please come play with us. Join the Discord server. Let's hop on stream. Let's have fun.
Heck yeah. I will actually make sure after we're done that I drop a link for the Discord in the
It's small. There's not a whole lot there to do right now, but my goal would be to have a Discord server where I have like 3 or 4 people who are designated as Legend Masters, and they can just say, hey, I want to play Tales of Legend, throw a little ad on the Discord server, and find players. Like,
I like
it's
that.
An active server for playing the game. That's what I want it to be.
The group I play with, the group is called Adventures in Arrowknee. There's a YouTube channel for it and everything if anyone wants to check it out. But one of the things they have on their Discord server that you might like is they have a job board where the person running the game, it's basically like there's a bulletin board in the tavern, and say Bill the Wizard needs you to go out and find him.
That's fun.
Component A or B. A group of adventurers can sign up. There would be, say, 4 to 6 people can sign up for the available slots. And then once it's full or at like the minimum of 4 or whatever you want to do, you could run that adventure for them.
That's so fun. I like that.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept that they came up with that they actually took from the West Marches campaign style and ported it over to Adventures in Arrowny. So it is really neat.
I like that. I'm going to talk to my mod about that now.
Nice. So we kind of talked about combat. We talked about the status effects. I know another thing that you're really itching to talk about is your take on weapons.
Yes, I'm so happy. So when I initially designed this game, I kind of wanted, I was too ambitious in one aspect. I was trying to make a TTRPG backbone. That's what Tales of Legend is. It is a backbone, a mechanical framework that could do any type of RPG, but I realized that doesn't work. Because my second thought was sci-fi. I am going to make a sci-fi version of this game system. But magic may or may not be in sci-fi. And then weapons. In Tales of Legend, I have taken the type of weapon away from you with melee weapons. I could not do with ranged weapons. In ranged weapons, it's fantasy. It's bows, crossbows, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
But we have weapon categories. We have small weapons, light weapons, flexible weapons, and powerful weapons. This is for melee. Light weapon, 1d4. Or I'm sorry, small weapon, 1d4. Light weapon, 1d6. Flexible weapon is 2d4 if you have one hand free. It is 1d4, 1d6. And then a powerful weapon is 2d6. Those are the damages. And then they each have other aspects based on that. For example, why would you want to use a d4 weapon? It only does d4 damage. It can be thrown 50 feet. It can be concealed very easily, and it can be used in either hand, etc., etc. They all have their own different things. I do not care what that weapon is. You get to tell me what that weapon is. You know what's not in 5e that ticks me off? A scythe.
There's no scythe in 5e?
Nope. Not the big two-handed
Yeah,
kind of scythe.
like you'd use in a wheat field or the Grim Reaper uses.
Exactly. So in Tales of Legend, if I want to use a scythe, I'm going to say, I'm going to make a 2d6 slashing powerful weapon. All the game cares about is the mechanic.
You decide what it is.
It doesn't care if it's a scythe. It doesn't care if it's a great sword. It doesn't care what it is. But I'm going to tell you, it is a
2d6.
2d6. But it's not slashing. I'm trying to think of my word. I talk about 5e too much. Crushing. Please do. It's perfectly fine if you did. I'll consider that a compliment. Okay, I'm blanking and I don't want to look it up because I don't want to look stupid. We use the word crushing. We use the word stabbing. And we use the word... Nope.
You're quizzing me, and I don't know right off.
I'm the one that wrote the damn thing, okay? I should know. I'm going to look it up real quick. Oh, look at how fast I can look it up. In real time, I'm showing you why I wrote it this way. It's called slice. So
cool.
A slice, it would be a 2d6 slicing weapon. Ta-da! It's a 2d6 slicing powerful weapon. And that's all the game needs to know. But to you, it's my scythe.
Nice. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm very much looking forward to playing this.
That makes me happy.
I'm glad it makes you happy. Like, you can tell, one, by how you express yourself, how passionate you are about this system, which you created, which you're obviously going to love. But looking at it and hearing about it, I'm like, damn, this is going to be so fast and fun to play.
I hope so. I really do.
It will be. I can already tell. So,
ooh. You know what we haven't talked about? The initiative system.
Okay. That was one of my next. Go for it.
I'm so sorry.
No, I was actually going to ask how the turn order went with everybody in this. So
I think, especially if you're going to be a Legend Master, please somebody else besides me be the Legend Master sometimes. You're going to love this. So when you decide that a combat scenario is started. Oh, thanks, Dave. Appreciate you, man. When you've decided that a combat scenario has started, you have to determine one of three categories: allies, foes, and bystanders. Oftentimes, there will be no bystanders. That's fine. So then the Legend Master rolls a d20. They make what's called a fate roll. Fate is my roll for if nothing else fits. It is in the hands of the gods. It is in the hands of Lady Luck. If you don't have gods, whatever. It is called fate. From a 1 to 10 means the foes start, and 11 through 20 means the heroes start. Your heroes initiative is based off of your grace score, period. So if you have high grace, you always go first among your friends. That is one of the bonuses for being fast.
Gotcha.
But here's how it works. Say I roll a 12, which means the heroes go first. Cool. The hero with the highest grace goes first. Then I pick a foe to go next. Then the next hero goes. So it goes like...
I got you. So it's almost... Well, it's funny that you said you're into the Japanese video role-playing games, because that's what I see. It's the bam across the screen, then bam back across the screen.
And two things that come out of this that I think is really important. If you don't just go by straight grace rolls and you always have to go hero, enemy, hero, enemy, hero, enemy, that represents because what's supposed to be happening is everybody's doing everything all at the same time, right? You just can't do that. Well, if 2 or 3 heroes get to go first, then all the enemies go, and then a couple more heroes, that doesn't actually make that feel like a reality. But if, regardless of how fast these 2 heroes are, if an enemy must be slotted between them, that's more even. Now, here's the really cool part. The Legend Master, the foes, do not have to follow that rule. The fastest hero makes their turn, then me as the Legend Master, I get to pick whichever monster I want to go.
So you could pick the hardest hitter.
I'm playing chess. I maybe want to pick the hardest hitter. Maybe I want to pick the magic user. Maybe I want to pick the boss or the minion. I don't know. But in the moment, I get to pick.
Very cool. Now, do you maintain that order throughout the whole combat, or does each round, does it change?
I finally decided on that is up to you.
Cool.
So if you want to say, since this was my monster number 1, this is always my monster number 1, that's how I typically play it. Great. But as your heroes start killing off the foes, you have to break that up anyway. Because here's the thing. Let's say you have hero, foe, but the first foe gets killed. The rules say you still have to go hero, foe, hero. It's to prevent the death spiral on either side.
Of having the players just annihilate the monster.
Yeah, suddenly I have 4 heroes going in a row. Well, I might as well stop the combat scenario.
Right. Yep.
So
I like it, man. There's nothing that you have told me about this system that I even remotely disagree with. Like,
I can think of one, but I think you're going to ask about it later. So,
all right. So we hit all that. We talked about magic. I'm just looking at my notes here, and I think we're coming to it.
You might like it, you might not. We'll see.
Heritages?
Oh, heritages.
I know. That was one thing that I did notice. So what exactly are heritages? I mean, I have seen the term at least used in other games, but it seems like with this system, you have a little bit of a different approach with them versus what I've seen in other games.
Yes, and this comes from the same like basic idea of the game, which is, what do you want to do? Broaden. So in my game, heritage does not mean race necessarily, does not mean ancestry, does not mean culture. It could mean any of those things. It's more broad than that. For example, the default heritage is called mortal. That's very open-ended, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be anything that's not an immortal creature.
Here's my favorite question to ask people. There's a heritage called fairy. It's like fae, right?
Yep.
In your world, what is an elf? Is it a mortal or is it a fae or is it a fairy? And the answer to that question is, how do you view your elves? Are they long-lived and a little extra magical, but fairly common in your world? I would argue that, mechanically speaking, your elves are mortal. Are they immortal and extremely magical and alien and rare? I would call them fairies.
Gotcha, because they're still going to die at some point if they're more common and live
And if you
to
want to
say
look at the
150.
mechanical benefits and make a decision that way, you certainly can too. But so let me look at the list real quick. Just by me saying these words, you're going to realize what I'm going for here.
I guessed at heritages, but of being the next thing, and now in the back of my mind, I'm like, dang, he wanted me to go to damage.
You do what you want. It's your show. We'll talk about all of it.
Dude, I will wind up all over the place if you tell me to do whatever I want. That's why I have my notes to kind of keep me structured.
So let me tell you the 10 heritages. Mortal, bestial, monstrous, fairy, cursed, blessed, magical, psionic, half-life. There's a 10th one and I'm not thinking it. I am doing this off the top of my head. But do you realize how broad that is?
I do, and I heard cursed, and I'm just like, damn, that's perfect for a vampire or a werewolf.
Vampire, werewolf, half demon. Do you love your tieflings in 5e? There you go. Or doesn't mean you're just a human that got hit with like dark magic. I don't care. Here's the mechanics. And you tell me what cursed is for you. If you read it in the book, it gives you examples of what kinds of things cursed can be. For example, blessed. I don't know. In my like D&D games, I have an almost godless world. I do not like D&D's mythology. I think it's dumb. I don't understand how we have all of these different gods and everybody picks one. I think it's very convoluted. So I either have a very limited pantheon, or I just don't have gods, or I don't even talk about the gods, whoever they are. So blessed could mean you are descended from an angelic being. It could mean you're blessed by a god, or it could just mean holy fire person. Whatever fits your world, that's what blessed is. You don't like the idea of a half-life, which is basically my undead-ish.
Yep.
Just don't use it. You don't have to use it. You know how in most games where they have lore built into the game,
you build your lore in this.
Yeah, so it's implied that everything has to exist that exists in the rules. Not true in my game. You don't want to use it? Don't use it. It doesn't exist. Boom. I mean, I played entire games of Tales of Legend. Everybody has to be mortal. Because that's just the flavor I'm going for. Does that mean everybody has to be human? No.
Nope.
Dwarves, halflings, some weird OC race that you came up with that only fits your world. Great. Bestial? Do you know how many ideas people have come up with when I say bestial?
Tabaxi,
werewolves, lizard folk.
I played a lizard folk in a 5e game named Lurpu, and he was a surfer, bro. Like, I love lizard folk
so much.
And I rarely broke character. I'd be like, yeah, bro, let's go surfing.
That's awesome.
And he tried to pay for everything in shells.
Oh, real quick. This is just me. Do whatever you want. It literally says in the book, do whatever you want. My currency is based off of the concept of like $1. It doesn't have a name. It uses a symbol. You call it whatever you want. But like, there's no 10 or 100 copper equals a silver, and then 10 or 100 silver equals a gold. I cannot stand doing that math in my head.
I just can't remember it. It's like,
also, how many times do you play D&D? And by the time you hit level 3, the concept of a silver doesn't even matter anymore. Everything's in
because you've
gold
got
anyway.
1,000 gold in your back pocket.
And that's how much
more.
everything costs.
Right.
So what was the point? So in my game, it's, how much is a meal? 5. How much is a shield? 250. How much is enchanting your sword? 2,000. How's that?
Nice. And that, it's funny because my brain is trained for other systems where it's like, well, enchant my sword, that makes it a +1.
Mm-hmm.
But in here, it makes it a flame tongue or
there is a robust enchanting system in the game which can be used by. I always love in video games, especially. I don't see it much in TTRPGs, where it's almost like a crafting system. Like, here's my weapon, and I'm going to pick between this list of bonuses I can put on the weapon. I just spend money to have that happen. That's what I do. And which means it's also really cool for legend masters who want to create legendary weapons or magic items in their world. Well, here's your list of things that you can just pick from and customize your own. Boop, here's MacGuffin sword. It does this, this, and this, which would have cost 12,000 currency to have enchanted.
Crazy. That's a lot of currency.
It is. There's actually a list. Oh my God, I have to talk about this too. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. That was the one thing I told you before this. Don't worry about time or anything. Like, I really want you to cover everything this game encompasses. If I
appreciate
miss anything.
That so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
All of you out there, how many times have you turned a page and looked at how much an abacus cost? Why do we need to know how much an abacus costs? I'm pretty sure your dungeon master could have figured that out off the top of their head. In Tales of Legend, if it is not an item that has a mechanical function, which means most items in any TTRPG are flavor-based, right? They're not exactly mechanics-driven.
Right. They're just mundane, fit your character.
I have a list of 20 things from cheapest to most expensive as an example. Like, it'll say a drink, 2 to 5. At the end, it says like a small keep, 100,000. And like one of the things it says is rent a horse. One of it says is fine clothing. And there's a list of 20 things. So the Legend Master can reference that list and go, oh God, how much is that block of cheese they want? That's probably going to be about, let's say 3. And you just figure it out instead of dedicating 6 or 7 whole pages to how much a bead is. Like a bag of
or even
ball
bearings or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like what? A bar of soap. They tell you how much a bar of soap is. They spent words. They spent text in the book on that. How many times have you looked at that?
I honestly will tell you, I did not even know a bar of soap was on the item list. And
it exists. And I'm like, I have seen dungeon masters, because they know that stuff exists, crack open the book at the game table to look that stuff up.
And
that wastes so much time.
Well, that, and it sucks you out of immersion.
Yeah. So part of the thing that the Tales of Legend does is if you play the game long enough, you memorize most everything. Hopefully, if you play long enough as the Legend Master, you have to look at that less and less, because what's going to happen is, how with the American dollar, we kind of know the ballpark of how much anything is. How much is a used car? $10,000 ish. That's what you're going to do as the Legend Master. You're going to have an internal understanding of how much one currency is, how much 10, 100, 1,000 currency is. So when a player comes up to you and says, I want to buy a bar of soap, you just go, I know how much a bar of soap is in my world. I know. And it's about the same. I try to make $1 but it gets a little weird. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Inflation is not the same in a fantasy world, but I think it makes sense.
Thank goodness it's not.
Right. Your basic, if you want to know what an average day's labor is for a commoner in my world, it's about 100 currency. That should tell you almost everything you need to know. That's a day's worth of labor in this world.
So they're fairly compensated.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. It's enough to live off of. It's
Right.
not great, but it's enough to live off. But I think if you know, okay, an average day's labor would be 100 of whatever the currency is. Cool. Now I know that like a mercenary, if you want to hire a mercenary for a day, that's like 500 because of how dangerous it is, and it's a great way to live.
Right.
Quickly, you're going to just understand how the economy works, and you don't have to have pages on pages and pages of mundane items.
I love it. Again, I'm probably going to tell you another 100 times before we go off air. That
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that because feedback, it's great. I learned how to do all of this stuff in the past 6 months. I spent 2 years writing the game. I didn't know how YouTube worked. I didn't know how OBS worked. I didn't know how to order a banner. I didn't know how to hire somebody to make a logo. Like I did all this in the past 6 months. So anytime anybody can tell me it was worth it by saying they like it, I need that.
Dude, I love it. So, like I will say it again that I cannot wait to play this.
I cannot wait to play it with you. I think we're going to have fun just playing.
Yeah. Yep. And I will assemble the Avengers basically to make us have fun. So I already have my own little crew in mind that I can.
And if your crew is fairly experienced with TTRPGs, we should do at some point for fun a high level game.
Hell yeah. I'm all for
like level 10 or something.
Yeah.
To see how crazy it gets. That'd be fun. By the way, the game doesn't break at mid levels like another game we know this. I made sure of that.
I love it. I love it. Wow, I am not very observant. I just happened to notice that your logo being the shield is Tales of Legend.
It's Tales of
Legendary
Legend
Tales.
and Legendary Tales at the same time.
That's great.
So when I eventually make like that sci-fi game I'm thinking about, I'm still going to use this logo for Legendary Tales and have like a secondary logo for whatever that game's going to be called.
I can't wait for sci-fi because I love science fiction.
Want me to go ahead and give you the working title?
Sure.
Voidscape.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it.
It is. Because what is the void?
Mm-hmm. Not yet.
Yeah, we are here talking about Tales of Legend, not Voidscape.
Isn't this a nice banner, by the way?
It is. You did you've done like for only knowing all this for 6 months, you've done a marvelous job. So I'll give you another pat on the back because
thanks. I look like I know what I'm doing. Because it's one thing to make a game. That just means you're a total mechanics nerd. It's another thing to learn everything around the company aspect of it, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's so much this has taken me 3 years to figure out really. I mean, I can be kind of a pokey learner, but it's taken a while to figure all this out and get to the point that I am now where I'm comfortable doing everything and I'm confident doing everything.
And you're doing a great job, by the way. This is so
Thank
good.
You.
This is so
I'm having a blast. Like, I had one guest, my buddy Lou told me that when we got done with our interview, he goes, I feel like I just sat down and had a beer with my buddy that I haven't seen in years. So that was the greatest compliment I could have ever gotten from anyone.
You're such a natural at this. This is great.
Well, thanks. It's lots. What's funny is I actually started doing this to push myself out of my comfort zone because I took some public speaking classes. I still wasn't really comfortable with showing my face on camera, talking to strangers that I've never met in person. And I was just like, I've got to do this. So I started doing this basically to force myself to be more outgoing. And it was very uncomfortable at first. Let me tell you, like, if you go back and watch my very first interview, there are so many ums and ahs and weird pauses through the video compared to now. It's like, I feel like Lou said with you that we've known each other forever and we're just catching up,
Absolutely.
But yeah. So now we're going to go back to where I should have naturally taken this with us talking about combat.
Okay.
And go to how damage works.
Okay.
Let's backpedal.
Two things we need to talk about there: damage properties and status effects.
All right, I'm going to bring the character sheet back up for status effects.
Okay. So there are 10 damage properties. There's 3, and they're divided into 3 subsections. You have the physical, you have the elemental, and you have transcendent damage. The physical is, we already talked about it, the stabbing, slicing, and crushing damage, right?
Yep.
The elemental is burn, chill, and shock.
Makes sense. Then, lightning, fire, and ice.
Exactly. I can't think of anything else that's truly elemental, because when you talk about earth, that's crushing damage, actually.
Right, because it's boulders or the earth coming up and consuming you.
And so the last 4 are transcendent. They are by design the rarest, and that's blessed, cursed, arcane, and psionic. And I cannot think of anything I've left out. So I looked at 5e and I said, you guys have way too many damage types. Like, if you want people to actually memorize all this stuff, I boiled it down to 10. Force damage, which is their like generic damage type. Some force damage could be burn damage, some of it could be crush damage, some of it, but like the arcane, like Eldritch Blast force damage, arcane.
Yeah.
Try. Well, what about acid? Acid burns. Acid and fire both burn, so they're both burn elemental damage. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Anything that I can boil down, if I can combine 2 things into one, I do. Now, when we look at the status effects, when you deal damage, you can expend a second action point on the one action. This becomes a bigger deal when you have a lot of action points, because you can only take 2 of the same action per turn anyway.
Right.
So let's say that I'm going to swing a sword, which slices. I will expend an action point and attack, and I hit. I can say I'm going to expend a second action point to try to inflict Slice's status effect, which is agony. Bleeding is agony.
And a big gash, if it's a
poison that deals damage, can be agony. Agony mechanically just means you take damage every turn. So you see what I'm doing here?
You're bleeding out, you're burning from acid.
Anything that you think of where you're like, well, I think the effect of this should be that they take consistent damage. Agony. Right. You tell me what it is. What acid, whatever you want that to be. But I'm going to tell you mechanically it's agony. Does that make sense?
Yep, makes absolute sense.
So what I do is I roll a second accuracy roll, and if I hit again, I've only done 1 attack, but now I inflict the agony status effect as well.
Because it's going to become sustained damage.
Crush is staggered. Burn is obviously agony. Shock is staggered. Cursed is afflicted.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You're afflicted with a curse.
Blessed and stab do their own thing. Blessed is you regain resolve. I need to talk about resolve too. You regain half the resolve that you deal in damage. That's blessed. Stab is it increases your critical hit ratio by 1. So if you attack with a rapier and you stab somebody with it, and you roll a 19 on the die and not a 20, I can say I expend an extra action point to critically hit.
Ah, I like that. So it's not I just missed it. You're like, I can spend a little extra
to crit more.
To crit.
Yep, to crit easier. So in my game, I don't have hit points. I have resolve, which it's even funny because they actually will say this in a game like 5th edition D&D as well, but nobody thinks of it this way. In Tales of Legend, the idea is that as you're fighting somebody, they are chipping away at your resolve to fight. You are getting physically exhausted. Your morale is being expended. You might be getting little nicks and cuts, but you are not being wounded, physically wounded, because guess what? If you were physically wounded, you stop fighting. That's what's realistic. If you were having a sword fight with somebody and you get a major gash in your arm, you're done. That's what's realistic. So
you just take a break. Come on.
It's only a flesh wound. So instead, as you're fighting each other and you're taking resolve damage, you're losing your will to fight. And then when you hit 0 resolve, that's when they got you. So when I'm talking about regaining resolve, it's whether it's through magic or whether it's through medicine or whether it's through like inspiration or whatever, it's I'm getting my second wind. I'm going to keep fighting. That's what resolve is.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Sorry, I told you I'm blind as a bat, and I actually increased the font size of what I had sent you to 14. And
now it's a little janky.
Yeah, no, now it's like a couple of my sentences I actually must have changed the spacing on, but the weapons we hit, combat, heritages, did that. I think we covered all of my questions. So what have we missed that I think we've covered everything, but I don't want to miss out on anything if
I remember one thing you wanted to talk about.
Oh, I know. Is this bringing this to print?
No.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I can think of 2 things.
Okay, so we'll backpedal to what you were thinking.
Yeah.
That I wanted to talk about because I have forgotten, obviously. ADHD for the win.
I get it.
Fire away, my friend.
The aptitude die.
Yes. And I've got another one too. So we actually have 3 things.
Cool.
And I'm going to write this down before I forget it so that I don't have the hum in
This is the thing that I'm afraid some people aren't going to like. In Tales of Legend, you don't, and again, I'm only going to go from 5e, and if you don't play 5e, you're going to be so lost. In 5e, you have what's called your proficiency bonus. And it means these are the things I'm good at, and that bonus gets bigger as you go. In Tales of Legend, you have the aptitude die, which actually this is an alternate rule in D&D that no one knows about, and I just think it's better. So when I'm going to try to accomplish something, I'm going to roll the D20, right?
Yep.
But if my Legend Master said, or if my character sheet says I have aptitude in it, I get to add the roll of my aptitude die to the D20.
Gotcha. So then it's going to, sorry, I was going to guess at how it worked.
Go ahead.
I kind of read it because I know you said you add your, dang it, I just lost the word.
Aptitude?
Yes. Aptitude with your physicality score if you had to, so it'd be 3 things added together.
Yes. And this is adding some extra dice, which for some people might be a little more work with some people, but I think with some people it's less, and I'll explain why. There's a physical representation of your aptitude. From levels 1 through 3, it's a D4. On that character sheet, do you see that little circle in the top right of the first page?
Yep.
Where the aspects are?
Here, let's bring that back up again.
I say this in one of my YouTube videos. That circle, you're supposed to literally put your D4 in that circle. It is your aptitude die.
That way you always know what you're using.
So I'm rolling my D20, D20, D20. Let's say I have aptitude and physicality. I roll my D20 and I roll my D4 at level 1. Add those together plus my physicality. That's my total. Then my aptitude eventually goes from a D4 to a D6 to 2D4 to 1D4, 1D6 to 2D6. The same scaling as weapons, the same scaling as magic. It's the same scaling in the whole game. You'll memorize that scaling.
I kind of have already.
Now,
I'm a nerd.
Well, here's the funny thing. 5e actually does that simpler than I do. I know that sounds weird. Your proficiency score is the average of my aptitude die.
Yeah.
Instead of rolling a D4 in 5e, it's plus 2.
It's a +2, right?
D6 is plus 3, etc., etc. And actually, using dice instead is an optional rule in D&D. I think this is better because I think there's a physical representation of it, and people won't forget it, and people actually kind of understand it a little bit better. So, and you feel awfully powerful when you roll a D20 and 2D6 every time you roll something you're good at. That just feels powerful.
You're looking at a potential 32 on your attack. It's like,
yes, the numbers are actually not bigger than 5e. The bounded accuracy is about the same, but it feels more impactful. Also,
because
we're not
you've got
afraid
a fistful of dice. You're
without having to do something absurd like roll 8d6 for fireball. Like, I know people like to go shuka shuka shuka, like that's fun, but in Tales of Legend, you can do everything with 5 dice: 1d20, 2d6, 2d4.
Man, I would not have caught that. And I did not even know that was an alternate rule. I have failed my nerd test for the night.
By the way, it also says it in the book. If you hate that and you would rather use the average, which is basically the proficiency score in 5e,
yep,
do it. It says it in the book as an alternate rule. If that's too weird for you, you don't have to do it. Doesn't change anything mechanically.
I like it. There's more stuff we've got to talk about too.
Oh boy.
Well, first, the one thing I noticed on the character sheet, I'm going to scroll back down here to page 2, is trigger actions.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you for remembering that.
Oh, you're welcome. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it, because I am obviously the king of forgetfulness. So.
By the way, everybody, as you see this, there's 2 versions of this hero sheet on my website. One is printout. The other one is a modifiable PDF if you never want to have to print anything out.
Very cool. I didn't even catch that. So.
And that's what I do because I don't have a printer at home. Okay, trigger actions. If anytime a creature other than yourself declares an action, you can declare a trigger action if you want to. You can only do it once per round, and it still costs an action point. So if you want to be super tactical about it, and you're like, I might want to do something that's not on my turn, you can do your turn and leave 1 action point to spare. And that moment that you want to, you can say, wait, I'm going to do a trigger action first. It's your Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap card. You can declare it anytime you want. You can what is a trigger action? An action. It's that simple.
I feel like when you look at someone's character sheet and you see that action point sitting there, it's almost like looking at someone with a bunch of open mana on the table, and you're like, what the hell are they planning?
What are they about to do? They have an instant that they're about to screw me over with. Now, there are a couple of basic limitations. You can only use 1 action point. So you can't because it makes sense, right? If you're doing something at the last second, you're not going to be able to craft this gigantic spell, for example.
Right.
But you can pick any of those 10 actions. So let's say you're about to take so much damage that you're going to hit 0. I'm going to use a trigger action to take the guard action.
And reduce the damage.
Now, you can declare a trigger action even if you don't have any action points to spare. But guess what happens?
You become winded.
You see? Doesn't it make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
It just makes sense. And there's one other rule. A winded character cannot declare a trigger action. So you can't trigger action yourself to death.
I like it. See, so I may have failed my nerd test with the 5e alternate rule, but I'm picking up on this pretty quick, which speaks to what you were trying to achieve with this, which is simplicity.
I want it to be instinctive if I can.
Yeah, I think it is very much so.
Instead of having different kinds of reactions like they have in 5e that are very specific, just take an action. Okay, well, what do I do for the shield spell, which is everybody's favorite reaction spell in 5e? Well, there is a spell option called Ward, which boosts either your physical or mental defense. So just use Ward as a trigger action. Basically, you cast shield.
I like it. Very cool. All right. So one of the other things, we've got two things that I've got still in my head that I didn't have to write down. The other 30 pages of this book,
Yeah.
the creatures. And one of the things that really popped out to me in looking through the book today and watching the videos on YouTube, and folks, if you haven't checked out Andy's YouTube channel, go over there, subscribe. There are tutorial videos for this game, and it makes it even easier to learn,
A
an
lot of
easy to
people,
learn system.
a lot of people prefer to just listen than to read.
Yeah,
I'll
I
break it
like
all down for you. I don't care.
that's actually how I came up with most of my questions for today, was just listening to the videos while I was doing other stuff, and I had my little steno pad there, and I'm like, oh, let's write this down. Then I'd go back to it. I'd hear, ooh, let's ask him about this.
It's doing what I want it to do. Everybody, please, if you don't mind throwing me a subscribe,
and I will make sure the link is down below after we
you.
get done here. You're very welcome. But yeah, creatures, what I noticed is there's no CR, there's no difficulty rating. They're tiered.
Yeah.
Why don't you go into basically what I'm going to say that I'm not going to say prompted, but what brought this change about for you?
So for any of you who've played 5e, they have what's called the challenge rating system. And if you've played 5e as a dungeon master, it doesn't work that well. Generally speaking, it works okay, but depending on what kind of effects some creatures have, it doesn't work at all. So instead of trying to be very specific with the CR, because they start at like 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, blah, 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 I go broad. I find the answer to everything is to go broad. So I have F, D, C, B, A, and S. I think everybody and their mother just understands what that means off the top of their head, right?
Yep. Your S is your top ranked.
It's your boss.
A, B, C, D. E.
Well, actually, that's funny to say. That's a boss for a high level character. So, in general, your F tier creature is something that a level 1 hero by themselves can handle pretty easily. They can probably handle 2. And then if you're like a mid level hero, they're your swarm of like minions. A D is a much stronger type of monster than an F. A D by itself can handle like 2 level 1 heroes.
It's that much of a step up. That's crazy.
Therefore, a D and a couple of Fs, there's you a nice deadly encounter for a level 1 party. C is exponentially harder than D. B is exponentially, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're level 1, 2, or 3, D tier is sort of your boss monster in a combat scenario. 3, 4, 5, a C tier monster is sort of your boss. And it says about the difficulty rank, but instead of trying to be super exact and say, well, this is a 1/4 CR and this is exactly where it should be, I just go broad. If you're sitting there and you're like, I want to scare the piss out of my level 2 party or level 3 party with a single creature, throw a C at them and see if they can survive.
And hear them scream like a 6-year-old child.
And if they're about to die, do what okay, this isn't a DM advice channel, but just adjust your resolve, your hit points. They don't have to know how many hit points it had.
Right.
If you're like, oh shit, they're going to die, I fucked up, in your head, just lower those hit points a little bit. You intended for your heroes to win that fight. That wasn't supposed to be one that could kill them.
Right. If it got like a couple of crits in there.
Then, exactly.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of suggestions. Also, there are templates in the book. Because even though I give you 50 generic monsters, I also have like an F template, a D template, a C template. My hope is that as you're building your own worlds with your own unique monsters, here's your template, make your own like orc or whatever.
Very, very cool, my friend. You keep making me come up with more questions, and a statement of one thing that I wish they had kept in 5e was minions.
Do you want me to? All right. Me too. I loved minions. Guess
One
what?
hit point.
F tier creatures in my game have between 1 and 10 hit points with an average of 5.
So you could make them minions if you wanted to. That they're just
by the time you hit level 4-ish, you can't roll below 5 in damage. They're functionally minions.
Right. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Without having to make minions. F tier creatures are minions. By the way, my goblins are F tier because I like the idea of goblins being these little things that like are really easy to kill.
Well, we're ending this conversation right now because goblins are the greatest creature ever invented.
Then make a D tier goblin because you have a template. It's that easy.
It is. I love it. Oh, man. Another question that just popped into my head is, do you have any kind of third-party license that or do you anticipate having one if you don't?
At the moment, because I'm not a legal expert, but it is written in the book that third-party content is more than welcome. I simply ask that you don't reproduce base mechanics.
Right. Like if I wanted to make a setting, though, for Tales of Legend.
100%. And if you want to make your own monsters that starts with those templates, please, 100% please do. That would make me so happy.
Very cool. Well, I might have a busy couple of days ahead of me, my friend. So,
and what's funny about it is since it's loreless and classless and all that fun stuff, there's not much to steal. Because you wouldn't have a reason to reproduce my entire rulebook unless you were just trying to steal my stuff, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Please make your own settings that use my system as your mechanical rule set, and I would play in those games every day.
Very cool.
I love that.
I love it myself. So, the last question I had was something we had talked about before we came on air. Was, do you have any, because right now this is a PDF only download, correct?
Yes, it is a 64-page PDF book on sale for $20, and there's a simplified free rules version on the website as well that you can just grab and look at first, and then if you like it, you can spend the $20.
Very cool. Now, do you have any intentions of trying to take this to print?
I do, yes. I think that'll be a next year thing. I would like to make, some people say zine, some people say zine, because it's only 64 pages. I can probably make a really nice little one of those.
Right.
And sell physical copies that way. But my ultimate goal would be to make, in a couple of years' time, a definitive edition, because I already have more rules that I'm thinking on creating, probably in secondary PDF documents. And maybe one of these days I'll compile everything into a nice definitive edition, maybe a nice hardback version. And that's the kind of thing I'd like to kickstart down the line.
Very cool. I think that would be awesome because geez, if you saw my apartment, it's ridiculous the amount of books and zines that I have, because it is my addiction, my passion, my love.
Yeah.
Gaming. So, well, Andy, that was all I had. Is there anything at this point that you feel like we have missed?
We have been very thorough. At this point, I just think if anybody's interested, just please come say hi. I just want to know you're out there. Join the Discord, or at least make a comment on a YouTube video or something, and let's build a little community around this game and have fun playing.
Hell yeah.
You can play up to level 5 with the free rules on the website. Just download the free rules and play a game.
Yeah, and then when you fall in love with the system, go back and buy the PDF.
That would be great.
Yeah. But like you said, if not, you could continuously play to level 5, which is honestly not that much lower than a lot of average campaigns will go now.
The limitations for the free rules are like, it only tells you the mechanics for mortal. It doesn't give you the other 9. It only gives you 2 spell options, which is magic attack and restore, just damage and healing, when there's 10 total. So the idea is, ooh, this is fun, but I'm still missing like 80% of what I could have. And maybe that'll entice people to like want everything.
Well, Andy, my friend, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I have had so much fun talking with you.
It's been great, man. I can't wait to hang out with you more.
Oh, I can't either. And Grimwood Games, I know we know your name and we've said it a few times, but
Dave,
thank you so much for joining us tonight. And
thanks for being here, man.
Avenue Studios was in here real quick earlier as well. Thank you for joining us.
These guys are great. You've got to check out their stuff too, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I've actually got Grimwood coming on in September.
His game's coming out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm very much looking forward to that because it's 2 days together. I mean, you can't get much better than that. It is.
I know so many Daves in TTRPGs, man.
These are the Daves I know. These are the Daves I know.
But if you like join my Discord, for example, I have all the links to all my friends' Discords, and these are some of the best game designers and like podcasters that you will ever find. It is the coolest group of people.
It really is. And you'll get to see the awesome Stone Cold Steve Austin gift that I dropped into the chat today.
That you were so worried about.
Well, I was, because it's like, it was right after Dave had posted, I post that. And I'm like, oh man, I hope he didn't think that was directed towards him, because the text kind of got lost in there.
I think it's safe to say that we are a PG-13 group.
Yeah. It's funny because I always have a lot of people ask me, like, what's the policy on your channel? I'm like, have fun. Because I mark all of my videos not for children. So
here's the thing. A disclaimer, everybody. If you do not have the common sense to know how to treat people with dignity, leave.
Yeah.
If I have to make rules for you, then don't be there. If I literally have to make rules for you, then leave. Like, I don't get it.
You've made 30 pages of rules. Does that mean I have to leave?
I don't know. Are you going to break them?
I might twist one or two.
You might try.
Yeah. Oh man.
Anyway.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to meet some of you other beautiful people who are part of Dave's audience. This is such a great connection.
Awesome. Well, my friend, folks out there, have a great night, and we will see it. Oh, tomorrow night, I almost forgot to even promote myself. One, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to the channel, and also head over to Andy's channel, subscribe. But tomorrow night, I have Tony Rowland from Arrowland Games coming on to talk about the realm of, oh man, I'm going to screw this name up because I don't know it. It is Gaian Enoch, I am going to guess, and he will correct me tomorrow or later.
That sounds awesome, though.
It is. It is a post-apocalyptic horror game. So, and speaking of that, there's also a free PDF from him that you can download on Drive-Thru RPG called Blood in the Snow that has some of the rules and a lot of other stuff that I won't keep people on here because I could talk games. I think I told you I had one interview that went 6 hours one night.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've had another one that I've had a couple go 4. And because, I just love to talk to gamers, and it's like,
it's infectious.
Talk about forcing myself out of my comfort zone. It's like when you go and talk to someone for 6 hours and you're like, holy shit, we've been streaming for 6 hours and it's 1 a.m. Then... All right. Well, I'm going to let folks get to bed. Thanks for joining us tonight. Check out Tales of Legend at legendarytalesrpg.com. And have a great night, folks. And we'll see you tomorrow night, hopefully.
Good night, everybody.